Are we good? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dadi Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dadi Jasodanandana Brajachanadanjana Jasodanandana Brajachanadanjana Brajajana Jamuna Tira Vanam Chadi Jamuna Tira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dadi 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 Jasodanandana Brajachanadanjana Dana Brajachanadan Jasodanandana Brajachanadanjana Brajachanadan Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Harividagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad. His Divine Grace E.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So following along with what you all have been doing here in Austin, there's a chapter summary, chapter by chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And this evening is a summary of chapter 11, Bhagavad Gita. Universal form. Vishvarup Darshan Yoga. Vishvarup means universal form, or the form, the rupa of the Vishva, the universe. Darshan. Arjuna gets to see it. Arjuna gets to see it, and several places in the course of the chapter, Krishna says, no one has seen this before. But others, Mother Yasoda saw the universal form. Do you know the pastime of Mother Yasoda seeing the universal form? Mother Yasoda looked inside Krishna's mouth. The universal form, right? The form of the universe. So Krishna is saying, no one has seen this before. Well, how do we understand she saw but no one else saw? And before that, Duryodhana saw a partial universal form, right? Yeah, you remember that? Not sure. He saw partial. And all the persons in the assembly saw partial. But so the universal form that we find here that Arjuna saw is a very unique description that's different from the universal form that's described in 2nd Canto, Chapter 1. It's the universal form, but it's a different experience of that universal form, a different feature, aspect, or perspective on the same universal form that Arjuna saw in Chapter 11. And then again in Canto 3, then again in Canto 5. And there's variations on what that universal form experience is. So this is a very specific description. And this is to be an overview, and so we'll just look at the 5 different sections, first of all, of Chapter 11. And the first is, we're going to go through verse by verse in this first section, Arjuna's request to see the universal form, and Krishna's, before he shows it, his little summary of what it is that he's been asked to show. And then a large section is what Arjuna saw, and what Sanjaya said that Arjuna saw. Because Sanjaya is describing this to Dhritarashtra remotely. So it means Sanjaya also saw it. Otherwise, how could he describe? And then the third section, short, but it's very important, the statement where Krishna says, time I am, and he requests Arjuna to become his instrument, the instrument of the time factor, the destruction factor. And a series of prayers, section 4, and section 5, the final section. Also very important. Only pure devotees see Krishna's two-armed form. So that's 55 verses in 1 hour. Wish me luck. But I'll make a go of it. Okay. Here's the first verse. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, text number 1, Arjuna said, "By hearing the instructions you have given me about these most confidential spiritual subjects, my illusion has now been dispelled." So what was chapter 10? Because that precedes chapter 11. It's Vibhuti Yoga. Last major portion of chapter 10 is Arjuna asking Krishna to describe ways that he could always remember him. And so Krishna describes ways that he could always remember him by his opulences or vibhutis within this world. And that's very confidential. And now he'll be feeling that his illusion has been dispelled. He's expressing deep gratitude and he praises Krishna. Not only is his illusion dispelled, but he's recognizing it's by the mercy of Krishna that this has happened, and what Krishna has taught and what he's now going to ask is very confidential, that only Krishna can reveal, what to speak of revealing the universal form. So that's how the chapter begins. Then, O lotus-eyed one, I have heard from you in detail about the appearance and disappearance of every living entity, and have realized your inexhaustible glories. Now, the way in which Arjuna addresses Krishna is important here. It's the lotus-eyed one, Kamala Patraksha. Here are some beautiful deity photos of Krishna with lotus eyes, Kamala Patraksha. And here's Baladev's commentary on what we just heard. I have heard from you directly, Tatvata, many times, Vistarasha, about the creation and dissolution of all beings caused by you, Tatvataha. I have heard about your eternal powers, that was the previous chapter, Avyayam Mahatmyam, in such words as Aham Krishnasya Jagata Prabhavak Pralayas Tata, chapter 7. I am the creation and destruction of the whole universe. And I've heard from you also that though you are the creator of everything, you do not undergo change. This is important. This is the basis of Krishna saying that he doesn't do anything. Because to do something, there's a change in the doer, and for Krishna, there's no change in the doer, because it's all being done by his energy, so he doesn't have to lift a pinky. He can lift Govardhan Hill without lifting Govardhan Hill. But he lifted Govardhan Hill without any change in him. Though you are the controller of all, you do not associate with or become affected by the controlled entities. You have stated this in such verses as Maya tatamidam sarvam. I pervade the whole universe. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Now he's making reference to chapter 9. We're already in chapter 11. So it's just kind of a little review of the foundation of the statements he just made, the confidential knowledge that he has heard, by which his illusion is now dispelled. And he's realized Krishna's greatness. So now he's going to make a request. In the third verse, he wants to see Krishna's universal form. But he describes it in a very interesting way. O greatest of all personalities, O supreme form, though I see you here before me in your actual position as you have described yourself, I wish to see how you have entered into this cosmic manifestation. I want to see that form of yours. So the form with which or by which he has entered into this cosmic manifestation. So in one sense, the universal form is the cosmic manifestation, but more precisely, it's the form with which or by which he has entered into the cosmic manifestation. In other words, who has seen the universal form? Or, the description that's in Canto 5, the Vedic cosmology picture. Who's seen a Mount Sumeru anywhere? Of that height, and trees of that height, and circular islands and oceans. Who has seen such a thing? And by the way, that picture of Vedic cosmology corresponds, there's some scholars in China that are professors. They're developing of late some interest in Vedic texts. And I read an English translation of a executive summary of one of those essays, where the statement is what's in Vedic cosmology corresponds so much, almost a one-to-one correspondence with the ancient Chinese conception of cosmology. It's no surprise. But there's a different name for Mount Sumeru, but it's the same mountain, and the tall trees standing on mountaintops surrounding Mount Sumeru, there's names for those mountains and the trees. It's so similar. No surprise. Now, they were surprised to see the similarity, but from our perspective, Vedic culture was all over the world. That they used different language, that's okay. But even Vedic cosmology, and it's Sariputa's book, Cosmology and Astronomy. There's a whole section on how the whole world picture of cosmology, all around the world, literally, from Siberia to South America to everywhere. Scandinavia, American Indians, Australia, all over the world, very, very similar depictions of cosmology. So, but that's one that's understood through hearing, and this is now one he's going to see it. So why does Arjuna want to see it? So our acharyas revealed some reasons why he wants to see it. He heard some of Krishna's vibhutis in chapter 10. Now he wants to see the complete form of that unlimited assembled together vibhutis. He's greedy. In order to convince others in the future who may think that Krishna is an ordinary person. He's not an ordinary person. Someone says, I'm also Krishna, then show me universal form. That's this other reason. To set a criterion for in the future there would be so many imposters who would pose themselves as incarnations. So Krishna is not, and someone that is cannot. They're similar but different. And Arjuna desires to see him actually in his universal form, to see how he is acting from within the universe, although he's apart from it. That was chapter 9. Vayatatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina. So how is this working? The concept is interesting. How's it working? Can I see that form of yours? That enters in and therefore the universe manifests itself. In the commentary, there's mention that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we see here, also showed his universal form to Advaitacharya. And that description of that universal form is not the same as the experience of what Arjuna saw. Again, this universal form is so astounding. There's different aspects of it, different realizations of it. It's not a different universal form, but the experience is different in different cases. So here's the next verse. We're still on these 8 introductory verses. Arjuna is asking, if you think that I am able to behold your cosmic form, O my Lord, O Master of all mystic power, then kindly show me that unlimited universal self. Scripture says in many places that one can see Krishna only if Krishna chooses to reveal himself to that someone in any of his features or forms. So one has to be eligible, and Krishna's willingness has to be there, and then one can see Krishna's form by revelation. So there's what Arjuna saw, there's what Advaitacharya saw, there's what Ramananda Roy saw, there's what Murari Gupta saw, but it's by revelation. One can see when the Lord reveals his form. And this is because Krishna, his position, he's the master of mystic powers. He can show or not show. He has inconceivable potency, and if he so desires, he can reveal himself. And since he's unlimited, how can he reveal the unlimited? Well, he doesn't reveal the unlimited to the persons that are limited, but he shows himself nonetheless. Krishna is not obliged to reveal himself unless one surrenders fully in Krishna consciousness and engages in devotional service. There's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya offering his obeisances to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, showing his 6-armed form. Now it's a little different depiction of the 6-armed form that we're used to seeing, but that's the image. So that's Arjuna's prayers, 4 verses. And then in another 4 verses, Krishna is going to respond. Before he shows the universal form, he describes what he's going to show him. And he uses this word 4 times in each of these 4 verses, Pasya. Pasya is translated as behold. We'll see there's significance in his use of that word. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, O son of Pritha, Pasya, see now, my opulences, hundreds and thousands of very divine and multicolored forms all at once. Hundreds of thousands of very divine and multicolored forms. It's important to understand this part of the universal form, that the universal form is not an eternal form, although it's one of Krishna's forms, which is a little puzzling. One has to ponder on it carefully. It's kind of like now you see it, now you don't. But, Krishna may disclose his form and then conceal his form also. So is that form, that's the spiritual form of Krishna with Radha, is that a temporary or an eternal form? It's an eternal form, that's manifest or not manifest. But the universal form is not eternal, and yet it's one of Krishna's forms. Just like the energy that makes up the universe, that's eternal. The form of the universe is not eternal. Now the form of Krishna, pictured here with Radharani, that form is eternal. Sometimes manifest, but even when not manifest, that form is eternal. The universal form is not eternal, but it's one of Krishna's forms. Being thus requested, this is Baladev's commentary on what we just heard. Being thus requested, the Lord speaks in 4 verses to let Arjuna see his own form as the total of all the devatas, as the creator with 1,000 heads, the antaryami of Prakriti. It's important. You know, the antaryami generally means supersoul, but the form of supersoul is different than the form of the universal form. But it's the form of the universe. And then, having made him qualified by that vision to reveal to him his form as time. And that's one of the sections. Krishna as the form of time. We'll get there quickly. By repeating the word pasya in several verses, in fact 4, the Lord conveys the astonishing nature of these forms that he will show. See these hundreds and thousands of forms of vibhutis in one form of mine, appearing with 1,000 heads. This should mean he's bestowing him, Pashyame, he's bestowing the potency upon Krishna, or Arjuna to see. May you be fit to see these forms. Vishwanath's explanation. Krishna contemplates. First, I will show Arjuna that form described in the Purusha Sukta as Sahasrashirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat. The Purusha Sukta prayers begin like that. That form with 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 feet. It is my own expansion, the first Purusha avatar, Mahavishnu, the antaryami of Prakriti. Later, by having the necessary qualification, I will show Arjuna my form as time. Considering in this way, in his mind, the Lord faced Arjuna, telling him to pay attention. Then he speaks this verse. Sounds like water in a pipeline. Quote, see these hundreds and thousands of forms, Rupani, in my one form, my Swarup. See hundreds of my Swarups, which are actually my Vibhutis. Now, both Baladev and Vishwanath are giving us this insight. This is Krishna's Vibhutis. Chapter 10 is now it's further expanded into the form of the totality of his Vibhutis. And there's no limit, as he said at the end of chapter 10, with but a single fragment of myself I maintain and support the entire universe. So here's the entire universe. Here's chapter 11, verses 6, 7, and 8. I've just put the Sanskrit so you can see in each of these verses it's Pasya, 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 Pashyame. Oh, best of the Bharatas. Pasya. See here the different manifestations of Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Ashvini, Kumaras, and all other demigods. Behold the many wonderful things which no one has ever seen or heard before. "Oh, Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. This universal form can show you whatever you now desire to see and whatever you may want to see in the future. Everything, moving and non-moving, is here completely in one place." Now he's preparing him. He hasn't shown that form yet. We've understood. "But you cannot see with your present eyes. Therefore, I give you divine eyes. Behold, Pashyame, my mystic opulence." So again, this is opulences. This is vibhutis. There's a nice painting showing these forms. So what is this a sign of? Arjuna is getting this divine eyes capacity. It doesn't mean that he's now on another level of bhakti and because he can see the universal form. Here's commentary. Intent on fulfilling what Arjuna prayed for, qualification to see that form, in the words, Manushe Yadi Touch Chakyam. The Lord gave Arjuna celestial eyes to see the heavenly form composed of all the devatas in order to astonish him. Now he's Krishna's devotee and he's seen a lot. But this is something he's never seen before. "You cannot see me with 1,000 heads, a form shining like 1,000 suns at once, by your eyes which are accustomed only to my sweetness. I give you celestial heavenly eyes. As I would put oil on my body in entering a swiftly moving stream, so I anoint your eyes suitably. See my majestic form, Yogam Aishvaram, with those eyes." Yoga means, quote, that which makes the mind concentrate. In the next verse, the phrase, Paramam Rupam Aishvaram, occurs. Thus, Rupam, or form, is the meaning of yoga. It should be understood, however, that although Krishna gave celestial eyes to Arjuna, he did not give him a celestial mind. If he gave him that type of mind to Arjuna, Arjuna would take pleasure in the celestial form. Some say, wrongly, that the universal form with 1,000 heads is superior to the form of Krishna as the chariot driver of Arjuna, and thus Krishna had to give Arjuna different eyes to see that universal form. This idea is refuted later. Many different interpretations of Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Now here's Vishwanath. There's giving commentary here. It's throughout, of course, but it's just to set the stage, give the bigger picture of what's going on here. Arjuna should not think that this is some form caused by magical trick or material illusion, for the purpose of giving him faith that the form which contains the whole universe is Sat Chit Ananda. The Lord speaks this verse, "By your material eyes you cannot see me, you cannot see my purely spiritual form. Therefore, I give you divine eyes. See the form with those divine eyes." By letting him see with those eyes, the Lord's intention was to give a little astonishment to Arjuna, who was thinking himself to be a material person. But actually, because Arjuna is a principal associate of the Lord, and therefore previously he appeared as Nara, along with Narayana avatar, Arjuna does not have material eyes, like ordinary material persons. What is the logic in giving spiritual eyes to Arjuna in order to see a mere expansion of the Lord, Mahavishnu, when the same Arjuna, with his very eyes, directly realizes the sweetness of his Lord? Good question. On the other hand, it must be said that the superior eye, which sees only the great sweetness of Krishna's human pastimes, as the cause of the Ananya Bhakta, does not at all accept the glories of the Lord's pastime performed with the Devatas. One who has tasted the juice of white lotus cannot relish sugar candy with his tongue. Thus, the Lord, wanting to show the majestic nature of his pastimes with the Devatas, in order to cause astonishment in Arjuna, who had requested just that, gave to Arjuna non-human eyes suitable for seeing Devalila, or the majesty in quality. Majestic in quality. The intention of giving such eyes will be explained at the end of the chapter. And we'll get there. So that's that section, the first section, 1 through 8. With Arjuna's request and Krishna's response, here's what you're going to see. And next section is Sanjaya, pictured here, speaking to Dhritarashtra, describing what Arjuna saw. And we don't see Dhritarashtra so well because we see Krishna and Arjuna pretty well. But Dhritarashtra is over in that seat. And Sanjaya is experiencing. Here's the picture. So Sanjaya is seeing because he got the mercy of Vyasadeva to see. And Arjuna is seeing because he got the mercy of Krishna to see. And he's just here, Sanjaya, describing what's going on the battlefield. O King, having spoken thus, the Supreme Lord of all mystic power, the personality of Godhead, displayed his universal form to Arjuna. That's how the section begins. And then verses 10 and 11, there's a depiction of the universal form that Arjuna is seeing, but nobody else in the battlefield is seeing. They must wonder what's going on with Arjuna here. Arjuna saw in that universal form unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated with many celestial ornaments and bore many upraised weapons. He wore celestial garlands and garments, and many divine scents were smeared over his body. All was wondrous, brilliant, unlimited, all expanding. So down in the lower left, that's Vyasadeva giving the power of vision to see what he was able to see to Sanjaya. It was a gift to Sanjaya from Vyas. The word aneka is used to describe that Arjuna saw unlimited or many forms. The word divya is used to illustrate that they were all extraordinary and celestial. Only by Krishna's grace Arjuna could see all this, and only by Vyasa's grace Sanjaya could see. Now remember, there's 55 verses to this chapter, so that's why I'm going quickly. And we're actually going to just skip sections. Verse number 12. In hundreds and thousands, if hundreds and thousands of suns, hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once in the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in the universal form. So I guess you get the idea. It's very bright. Text 13. At that time, Arjuna could see the universal form of the Lord with unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many, many thousands. That's like better than 3D projection. It's wrap around in all directions. Quite overwhelming, I'm sure. The word tatra is very significant. It indicates that both Arjuna and Krishna were sitting on the chariot when Arjuna saw the universal form. Others on the battlefield could not see this form because Krishna gave the vision only to Arjuna. Next. Then, bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances, and with folded hands began to pray to the Supreme Lord. So that finishes another section. And here's the third section, Arjuna's description of that universal form. And I'm only going to touch on what we saw because we're all quite familiar with what he saw. Hands and faces and mouths and teeth and everything. Arjuna said, "My dear Lord Krishna, I see assembled in your body all the demigods and various other living entities. I see Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, as well as Lord Shiva and all the sages and divine serpents." Now the photograph on the left is actually, from the Fate Museum. It's a 3D exhibition of what Arjuna saw. Pretty amazing. And here's an artist rendering of what Arjuna saw here and there and there, here and there. All the forms of Krishna at once. Oh, Lord of the universe, oh, universal form, I see in your body many, many arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes expanded everywhere without limit. I see in you no end, middle, and no beginning. And I meant to remove this slide. This is text 17. Your form is difficult to see because of its glaring effulgence spreading on all sides like blazing fire or immeasurable radiance of the sun. Yet I see this glowing form everywhere, adorned with various crowns, clubs, and discs. I meant to remove this slide also. Yeah. You are the supreme objective. You are the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You are inexhaustible, and you are the oldest. You are the maintainer of the eternal religion, the personality of Godhead. This is my opinion. No, he's not just describing what he's seeing, he's describing his interpretation or his understanding of what it is that he's seeing. You are without origin, middle, or end. Your glory is unlimited. You have numberless arms, and the sun and moon are your eyes. I see you with blazing fire. Now this is entering into the destruction force of feature of time, which we heard from the Acharyas that Krishna is going to show the general universal form, then he's going to focus on the time feature. I see you with blazing fire coming forth from your mouth, burning this entire universe by your own radiance, commentary says the blazing fire coming from the mouth of the universal form is burning this entire universe. This is the beginning of the description of Krishna's Kalarupa. His form is time. And that's the painting on the left, the flame coming out of his mouth. His form is time. It is understood that now, foreseeing the war, the Devas, Asuras, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and others who were friendly or neutral had gathered. Not only Arjuna was given celestial eyes, they were also given celestial eyes by the Lord to see this form. This is Baladev writing. If only Arjuna could see that form, it would have been like a sleeping person seeing chariots or other objects in a dream, while others could not see them. The Lord made this display so that many others could bear witness to his powers, Krishna's powers. Next, all the hosts of demigods are surrendering before you and entering into you. Some of them, very much afraid, are offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings crying, "All peace," are praying to you by singing the Vedic hymns. All the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, the Adityas, Vasus, Sajas, Vishvadevas, the two Ashvins, Ashvis, the Maruts, etc., etc., are beholding you in wonder, as is Arjuna, of course. Oh, mighty armed one, all the planets with their demigods are disturbed at seeing your great form. So it's confirmed they're seeing it also. With its many faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth. And as they are disturbed, so am I. So he's going to start asking him, who are you and what's your mission? And there comes time I am. Oh, all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you with many radiant colors, touching the sky, your gaping mouths and your great glowing eyes. My mind is perturbed by fear. Look at that painting. I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. That's an artist trying to capture what this verse is saying. O Lord of Lords, O refuge of the world, please be gracious to me. I cannot keep my balance, seeing thus your blazing death-like faces and awful teeth in all directions. I am bewildered. So, please remove that form, right? All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings and Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and our chief soldiers also are rushing into your fearful mouths, and some I see trapped with heads smashed between your teeth. Yikes. Like a bad dream. As the many waves of the rivers flow into the ocean, so do all of these great warriors enter into your blazing mouths. I see all the people rushing full speed into your mouths as moths dash to destruction in a blazing fire. And Arjuna's a big hero. He's trembling. Oh, Vishnu, I see you devouring all people from all sides with your flaming mouths, covering all the universe with your effulgence. You are manifest with terrible, scorching rays. Oh, Lord of Lords, so fierce of form, tell me, who are you? I offer my obeisances unto you. Please be gracious to me. You are the primal Lord. I want to know about you, for I do not know what your mission is. So that's the lead into another section, the section that's entitled Time I Am, Become My Instrument. So there's a nice Time I Am image, Time I Am, Kalos Me. The Supreme Personality of God had said, Time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds, and I've come here to destroy all people. It's pretty clear. When we read this the other day, when Putana saw Krishna, she made some similar remark. He's not extraordinary. He's appeared in this world to destroy all demons. Now, he's not just here to destroy all people, but destroy all demons. But even soldiers on their side were killed. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. Here's some images showing these features of destruction, of the time factor. That painting on the left, that's a celebrated ISKCON painting of the time feature of the Lord with fire coming from his mouth, etc. And you see the clock up on the right side. Therefore, get up, prepare to fight, and win glory. Conquer your enemies and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Sabyasachi, can be but an instrument in the fight. Now the Acharyas give us an explanation of what Sabyasachi means. In case you didn't know, it means he's ambidextrous. Sabyasachi means one who can fight ambidextrously with either hand, left or right. Krishna therefore encourages Arjuna to now use all his skills to fight without pride, because Purvam Eva, by previous arrangement, not because of Arjuna's skills, the warriors are all as good as dead. Because of this is Baladev's comment. Because of this, rise and fight according to your dharma. Gain fame. Attain rare glory. Warriors such as Bhishma, who cannot be conquered by the Devas, have been defeated by Arjuna with ease. Such will be your fame. They have already been killed by me. At the time of their offending Draupadi, they are proceeding like puppets to give you fame. Therefore, just become an instrument, O Arjuna, skillful with the left hand. Sabya Sachin, you are skillful at shooting arrows with your left hand. Therefore, at the time of battle, you can shoot showers of arrows with both hands. Okay, that completes a section of what he saw, what Sanjaya saw that he saw, and what he saw, and then Krishna's declaration, he's time I am, and the appeal, become my instrument. Two important, both often repeated phrases. Kalos me, time I am, and nimitta matram bhavya savyasachin, become my instrument. Because this is our function. I mean, the 11th chapter is instructing Arjuna, but it's also instructing us. Whatever our function is, perform your function, perform your duty to Krishna, and be the instrument of Krishna for what your capacity is to do it for him. Now we have just 2 more sections, and I think I'll be able to finish timely. There's Arjuna's prayers. Whoops, backwards. There's Arjuna's prayers that goes through verse 46. So 10 prayers. We're not going to cover them all. We'll start with the first one. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, "O king, after hearing these words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trembling Arjuna offered obeisances. With folded hands again and again, he fearfully spoke to Lord Krishna in a faltering voice as follows." Now note, that's verse 35, and we're going to skip some verses. So in those verses, he's describing his acceptance of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he did in chapter 10. He's doing again in this chapter, reasonably so, and apologizing for, although he is the personality of Godhead, he's been treating him as a friend, because that's their relationship, Sakya. "Thinking of you as my friend, I have rashly addressed you, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend. Not knowing your glories, please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times, jesting as we relaxed, lay on the same bed, or sat and ate together, sometimes alone, sometimes in front of many friends. O infallible one, please excuse me for all those offenses." Now here's, on the left-hand side, the painting where there's the Pandavas with Krishna. And this is when they are finishing their exile. In the center is Krishna taking rest, propping his feet up on Arjuna and using Arjuna as a pillow. And Draupadi, as she is in that darkish complexioned lady, I guess the other is Kunti. And Krishna and Arjuna leisurely sitting together. "Oh, I have committed the greatest offense to you, who are filled with such great powers." In this way, Arjuna manifests great regret. "Either through negligence or out of affection, not knowing you as the universal form, I have treated you badly during leisure and other times in order to joke. I have scolded you with sarcastic words, saying that you are truthful, innocent, and very gullible. I beg forgiveness for the thousands of offenses produced when you are alone, not in the presence of friends, or when you are surrounded by friends who are joking. O Master, I beg you to forgive me." This is the implication of Arjuna's calling out Krishna. Each of the three names of address implies that Krishna is in a low position, not suitable in addressing the Supreme Lord. He addressed him by different names. Two more verses ends this section. "You are the Supreme Lord, to be worshipped by every living being. Thus I fall down to offer you my respectful obeisances and ask for your mercy. As a father tolerates the impudence of his son, a friend the impudence of a friend, or a husband the familiarity of his wife, please tolerate the wrongs I may have done you." After seeing this universal form, which I have never seen before, I'm gladdened, but at the same time my mind is disturbed with fear. Therefore, please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of God and the Lord of Lords, abode of the universe. Now he asked for it, and Krishna was reciprocating. Now he wants it to go away. "Though I am delighted having seen your body composed of the form of the universe which has not been previously seen, my mind is distressed with fear because of its ferocity. Therefore," this is Vishwanath commenting, "show me that human form, tad eva rupa, the form of the son of Vasudeva, the form of sweetness, which is millions of times dearer to my life, show me favor. Do not display to me that form of great power any longer. I have now seen you as the Lord of the Devatas, the resting place of the universe, Jagan Nivasa. So that's the end of section 4, and there's only one more section. We'll go back again, take a look at the opening slide to see what the sections are for review. The last section is really important. There are often quoted verses here. Only pure devotees see Krishna's two-handed form. My dear Arjuna, happily have I shown you, by my internal potency, this supreme universal form within the material world. No one before has ever seen this primal form, unlimited and full of glaring effulgence. Oh, best of the Kuru warriors, no one before you has ever seen this universal form of mine, for neither by study of the Vedas, nor performance of sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can I be seen in this form in the material world. Interesting painting there on the left. That little thing on the bottom, that's the chariot. And Krishna's universal form is really huge. Really huge. You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now, let it be finished. My devotee, be free again from all disturbances. With a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire. Of course, we know Krishna first showed his four-armed and then the original. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality Godhead Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form, and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. So first the four-armed, then the two-armed form. Question: which form is more difficult to see? Arjuna says, Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking this opportunity to see this form which is so dear. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by study of the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. Notice there's only two more verses. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service, celebrated verse, right? Bhaktyamam abhijanati, can I be understood as I am standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. And last, my dear Arjuna, he who engages in my devotional service free from contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, jnana karma dhanavatam, right? He who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. Baladev's commentary. The 11th chapter shows that Krishna is the complete form of God because he is the source of all avatars, and he is thus the cause of the victory of his devotees, the sons of Pandu, on the battlefield in Bharata. Now the comment at the top is something from the purport of Srila Prabhupada from the Bhagavatam, 6th canto. Victory is always with the Supreme Person. And this is from, again, the 6th canto. Taking to Krishna consciousness and bringing fallen souls to Krishna consciousness is victory for Lord Krishna. This is the last slide, quoting a verse from the 18th chapter. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. So here's our sections for those of you that want to get a picture of the overview, which was what I was asked to do. It's 5 sections. The starting point is Arjuna's request in 4 verses, Krishna's general description of what he's going to show in the next 4 verses. That's before, all this is the preliminary to the showing of the form. The section is showing of the form, Sanjaya's remarks, and Arjuna's description of what he's seeing. It's a large section. And then Krishna's declaration is a smaller section, but it's an important, very important one. Time I am, become my instrument. Then there's Arjuna's prayers after seeing all of this. And then the conclusion is Krishna's making his declaration that the 2-armed form can only be seen by devotees. And of course, Krishna reveals that form to his devotees, but one cannot see it otherwise. Now, you can't see the universal form otherwise either, but to see Krishna at all. So how fortunate are we? We have so many artistic renderings of Krishna's form. And our teaching is, those artistic renderings, they're also Krishna. Worshipable forms. So this is the summary of chapter 11, the universal form. The universal form is not easy to understand, yet it appears again and again and again. Therefore, it must be important. It's a detail, but it's an important point that in Canto 5, the description of the universe, or Vedic cosmology, begins with Shukadeva Goswami saying, all of this cosmology is the universal form. And he ends saying, I've described now the universal form. So that description in those chapters is certainly a different description than what we see here. But it's the same universal form as the form by which Brahma builds the universe. So there's different experiences or realizations of that universal form, suited for the beholder. Now, since this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, we're going to stay focused on what Arjuna experienced, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11. And it's now about 1 hour has passed. So I met my time constraints. Let's see if there's some comments or questions from anyone.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, there is a question on Facebook. Thank you very much for taking us through the chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita again. As one hears the pastimes of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam and in Mahabharata, one observes that there is no special reference to is being four-armed usually. Rather, he is in two-armed form. How then is one to understand that two-armed form is more rare than four-armed form? Asking because Krishna show four-armed form and doesn't say it is rare. But when he shows two-armed form, he says it is rare. Thank you very much.
To see Krishna at all is rare. If you tell me that you saw Krishna, I'll say, boy, that was really rare. But the rareness in this case, reference to rareness, has to do, my understanding is, it has to do with the confidentiality of that form. Let's say there's a great person. How many people really understand in a close-up way the features and details of that great personality? Most people see from a distance, and they see something other than the people who are very close. From a distance, it's opulences and greatness and majesty and all those things, and this is a worldly great person. So the two-armed form indicates that the more confidential nature of Krishna in his dealings with his intimate devotees. And how many intimate devotees are there? Just as how many persons who intimately know a great person. Very, very few compared to all the other people that know of that great person. In that sense, it's rare.
And there is a question from Zoom. Satyarupa Gauranga Prabhu, please unmute and ask.
The universal form is anyone can observe the opulences by saying that it is recognized, but Krishna's form is not in that. So we can recognize his opulences unless and until we know his confidential nature.
Unless and until we know what? His powers. Let me say back what I think I heard, or what I heard, or what I think you said. Is it necessary to understand Krishna's powers in order to get to that stage where we can understand the intimacy of Krishna? That's not what you're asking. Satyasara is shaking his head no. Say it.
Satyarupa Prabhu?
You say Satyasara.
Alright, Prabhu. Guru Maharaj, Satyarupa Prabhu is saying, so the universal form is, we can understand the universal form more easily.
Really?
Because he shows his power, like he shows that he is the personality behind this universe and so on. But the two-handed form, a normal person sees and they cannot understand that he is a Supreme Lord because the two-handed form is full
He's
of...
not revealing his opulences.
That is correct.
And now you're asking, is that understanding correct? That's what's being
Yes.
asked. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say yes to your understanding. One of the reasons being the universal form is very difficult to understand. Yes, it shows vibhutis, but it's very difficult to understand. When you start to consider what's being shown, like for example, hands and faces everywhere, bellies everywhere. Imagine sitting somewhere in your chair, wherever you are right now, and any direction you look in, you see form of Krishna, up, down, sideways, left, right, above, below, all directions. There's Krishna's form. Can you grasp that in your mind? Can you understand that with the mind? To me, it's mind-boggling. And then and then go through it. Go through that. This is chapter 11, Bhagavad Gita, and go through the other descriptions of universal form. They're equally mind-boggling. So I don't find the universal form as easy to understand because it shows that the plenitude of Krishna's opulences. Rather, at least from my little position, it's easier to see, particularly with the help of our acharyas, that Krishna's, although he's not displaying his opulences in his two-armed form, from time to time he exhibits this one or those few and then withdraws them and exhibits some other ones. They disappear and some other ones take their place. Because he's the reservoir or the resting place of all potencies, and when he shows them, a few at a time, it's easier to understand that he's the source of all opulences than when he's showing all those opulences all at once and overwhelming anybody that sees it, Arjuna included, who was a great warrior, a great hero. So it's astonishing, yes. And as far as astonishment, mission accomplished. As far as understanding, I'm not sure your explanation is correct. It's easier to understand one because you see all the opulences.
Krishna is saying, even great rishis and all cannot see. Now you can see. So Krishna is addressing his 200 form, 200 form or universal form.
So Krishna says to Arjuna that even the great rishis cannot behold this form. So the form is referring to, is it a universal form?
Yeah, universal form.
Universal. That's all. Okay. Guru Maharaj, there is a question online. Dear Guru Maharaj, we understand that the element of time, Kala, is present only in material world, does not exist in spiritual world. It is very bewildering to understand this because with the blink of an eye, which is an event, there appears to be some moments of time passing. Whether one is in spiritual world or material world, may I kindly know how to understand this?
By bhakti, that's how to understand it. I mean, your question was, how can I understand it? Now, a modification of the preamble of your statement. Time as we know it, past, present, and future time as we know it, is absent in the spiritual world, but there's time in the spiritual world. There's eternal time in the spiritual world. And that eternal time in the spiritual world is quite flexible. Krishna moves that time energy as he wants to. It does not to destroy things, because there's not creation or destruction, because creation or destruction means past, present, future. But there's not time as we know it, but there's time eternal. And things move very conveniently. I mean, it was just because we discussed it yesterday with a Chinese group. When Krishna jumped from the mountain, when Jarasandha couldn't find him, so he burned the mountain. Krishna and Balaram jumped from the mountain, and the mountain was a really tall mountain. It was 11 yojanas tall, and 1 yojana is 8 miles. You ever seen a mountain that's 8 miles? What to speak of 11 times 8? And they jumped. And before they even hit the ground, they didn't splatter, but Krishna arranged by his mystic powers for chariots to arrive. They just appeared. And he had one, Balaram had one, and whisked them away in a fraction of time, all the way to Dwarka. Now, that's not ordinary. The size of the mountain, jumping from the mountain, chariot just showing up, and so Krishna has unlimited powers. Krishna has unlimited powers, and etc. So many examples of Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. But on the other hand, Krishna can lift Govardhan Hill without lifting Govardhan Hill. His powers had no limit. So, but when he does things, it's exhibiting his powers to some degree, but it's his sweetness. Now I'm kind of lost track of the essence of your question. Could you repeat the essence of your question and see if I hit the target? Yeah, read the question again.
We understand that the element of time, kala, is present only in material world.
Time
does not exist in spiritual world.
Time exists in the spiritual world, but not as we know it. So how to understand that time that's in the spiritual world appears to be passing, but time isn't passing? That's Krishna's potencies at work. That's the explanation of how things happen, is by Krishna's potency. Let's just say, lifting of Govardhan Hill. Just to lift Govardhan Hill, that's a pastime. It takes time. He was under that hill for 7 days, 7 nights, and put the hill back down. But that's a pastime that Krishna performs in this world, where it looks like past, present, and future. Now, how do events take place in the spiritual world? Because it sounds like past, present, and future, but there's no past, present, and future. It's the very flexible time energy moving according to Krishna's indication for pastimes, purpose. Here's a practical example. For example, time, as we know it, is calculated by movements of the sun. For example, day and night. That's the passage of time, the movements of the sun. Or the movements of the seasons, or the movements of the years, or movements of time is by the movements of the sun. In the Bhagavatam, the smallest unit of time is the time it takes for the sun to cross one atom. And then so many of those makes another unit. So the movements of the sun is the determination of time energy. Kala Chakra, it's called. The wheel of time. The sun moves on Kala Chakra in this universe. So let's go to the spiritual world. And there's daytime and there's nighttime. But we know from Bhagavad Gita there's no need of sunlight, moonlight, electricity. But there's daytime and there's nighttime. So is that, what is that? Is that time? Movement, so it's not calculated by the movement of the sun. It's there for Krishna's pastimes. Because there's phases of the day, and there's with phases of the day, for Krishna's pastimes, there's phases, then there's varieties of activities during those 8 periods of time. But there's no need of the sun. There's no calculation of time. It's for pastime purposes. So how do we understand it? It's the movement of one of Krishna's energies, Kala, Shakti, that does exist in the spiritual world, and it moves according to Krishna's indication for his pleasure pastimes. Now, we don't have any experience of that because we have the experience of this, past, present, future. But, chant your rounds nicely. Go to the spiritual world. That's what you'll experience. Time does exist as eternal time.
So what learning should we take away from this chapter apart from understanding the opulences of Krishna?
There's many. What understandings we should take away. We heard, we'll go to that page again. Why is Arjuna making this request? Arjuna's making this request because he wants to remove, here it is, he's eager to hear Krishna's unlimitedness. He wants to convince others in the future who may think that Krishna is an ordinary person. A takeaway is how Krishna is acting. I mean, the fullness is not presented. The topic of Brahma's building the universe. Every morning, when Brahma wakes up and takes his bath and does his sadhana, part of his sadhana is meditating on the universal form, because he has to build the universe again, because it's partial devastation at the end of his night, or during his night. So it's a function by which the Lord exists, even though we can't see him in that form, unless Krishna reveals it, that the universe structure is the universal form. And another takeaway is we should know that if there are some imposters that say that they're God, they can be challenged by saying, show me your universal form. There was a discussion with Prabhupada once. What if somebody says, I could show you my universal form, but you're not qualified? Then Prabhupada said, you can ask that person, who amongst your followers has seen that universal form? And if there's nobody, then you're not qualified to empower someone to see your universal form? It's so. Those are some of the takeaways. The form of the universe is Krishna's form that's not eternal. That's another takeaway. As with chapter 10, there's vibhutis. As with chapter 11, there's all the vibhutis in one place, in one time, in all directions. And vibhutis are but tiny fragments of the totality of Krishna's opulences. So another takeaway, how important is this two-armed form? We wouldn't even know about the universal form if there wasn't a chapter about it in chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita. But the most important of the forms of Krishna is this two-armed form. So be happy. That's it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Speak more directly into the microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. There is mention of real form is four-handed form here.
Not the real form is four-handed. The real form is the spiritual form, which is either four-handed or two-handed. Not the real form is two-handed, is four-handed.
Okay.
Real form is spiritual.
Okay.
Not temporary.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. My question was, when Sanjay was describing the universal form Dhritarashtra was hearing, and even after hearing the form, and how come he did not change his mind?
Yeah, it's very surprising. He's like really a stubborn man. And hearing all this Supreme Personality of Godhead and seeing this and what his position is, and he's still like, go sons, go, win the battle. Really stubborn. But some people who are like that, they can't understand, even they hear it. They go to the scholars that read Bhagavad Gita and come up with something other than Krishna is the personality of Godhead. It's puzzling, isn't it? That's the illusory potency. Dhritarashtra was under the influence of the illusory potency, so even he could see, he couldn't see. Or even he could hear, he couldn't understand. Even Sanjaya's, Vyasadev's disciple, explaining it, he can't understand it.
Could not get purified at all, even by listening it.
Well, we can't say he didn't get purified at all, because there's some purification just by hearing, but not sufficient that he changed course. That was your question. Why didn't he okay, I surrender. Let's stop this awful warfare. He was very determined, blinded by his own attachments.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I was thinking the same as we were hearing. Wait a minute.
When you see that, when you explain that everything is
Mike,
when everything is going into Krishna's mouth,
including all his sons.
so you know that there is no point in even trying to pursue this thing.
Oh. Okay, I think we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.